morning, Angie, for you. We're going to head on into Act 5, Scene 1. Two grave diggers, played by clowns, are preparing Ophelia's grave as they pass the time joking about their work. Hamlet and Horatio approach and join in their conversation. Hamlet comes to the skull of Yorick. Yorick is the king jester. He used to be the king jester. A court jester who entertained Hamlet in his childhood. Ophelia's funeral procession approaches, and Hamlet learns that Ophelia is dead. When Laertes expresses his grief by leaping into Ophelia's grave, Hamlet also leaps in and fights with him. As the scene ends, Claudius reminds Laertes of their plan to murder Hamlet. Essentially, he says to Laertes, "Be patient, you will have revenge soon." Okay, so this deal about jumping into the grave with Laertes, he jumps in also proclaiming his sorrow and also announcing the truth that he loved Ophelia. And in fact, he is going to claim that he loved Ophelia way more than Laertes ever could. He's going to suggest that he loved Ophelia more than 40,000 brothers ever could. Okay, so we see in this little banter between Hamlet and Horatio, the old, warm, funny, kind of thoughtful Hamlet. Just a little glimpse of him here. And then the new Hamlet in the preceding acts was kind of reactive and impulsive, but the new Hamlet is quite different. We're going to meet him in this act for sure. He is focused, he is calm for the most part, there's definitely been a huge shift in his character. Okay, let's see. Various plots and themes converge here in the graveyard, and the characters themselves also come together. We're going to see most of the main characters converging here in the graveyard. Before the procession arrives, we're going to see that Hamlet reflects on mortality, and absent is, though, the obsession that he had with revenge. He still wants it, but he's not obsessed with it anymore. He has a new focus, right? To be really swift in his actions. Okay, let's do this. Let's turn over here. Oh, before we get into it here, we had a bit of a discussion in Act 4 about Ophelia's death and whether we thought she committed suicide. There wasn't a lot of information there, and many thought maybe it was possible that she just died by accident. It's a very, very big deal to establish whether she committed suicide or not, because for the Elizabethans, if you committed suicide, you were denied access to a Christian burial, and some people say you didn't even go to heaven. So it's a big, huge deal to establish whether she committed suicide. And so that's what the gravediggers here at the very beginning are going to have a conversation about. All right, so Act 5, Scene 1.
Is she to be buried in Christian burial, but wilfully seeks her own salvation?
I tell thee she is. Therefore make her grave straight. The crowner hath sat on her, and finds it Christian burial.
How can that be? Unless she drowned herself in her own defence.
Why, it is found so.
Oh, it must be see off and dender. Cannot be else. For here lies the point. If I drown myself wittingly, it argues an act, and an act hath three branches. It is to act, to do, and to perform, Argyle. She drowned herself wittingly.
Nay, but here, you goodman Delver.
Give me leave.
All right, so the first clown is saying, is she really going to receive a Christian burial? And the other guy says, yeah, the coroner examined her and established that, yep, that she should, there isn't enough evidence there to suggest that she indeed did kill herself, but the word is that she did. So it's debatable. And so the other clown says, get to shoveling, man. They're on their way. And she's going to receive a Christian burial here very, very shortly. And so the other clown says, well, I don't understand, because it sounds very much like she committed suicide. And he's going to go into this explanation of how, in his opinion, if you walk into the water, then you are committing an act. If the water comes to you, then you have not committed an act. So he is arguing here that because she went into the water, that she is responsible for her own death. And he's gonna suggest that it's not fair that noble men, noble people, get this privilege of being excused so often from their actions. And they still do, right? Rich privilege or white privilege, yeah.
Here lies the water. Good. Mm-hmm. Here stands the man. Good.
Oh.
Now, if the man go to this water and drown himself, it is willy-nilly he goes, mark you that.
Aye.
But if the water come to him and drown him, he drowns on himself. Our gal, he that is not guilty of his own death, shortens not his own life.
But is this law?
Right. Marriest, Crowner's quest law.
Will you have the truth on't? If this had not been a gentlewoman, she should have been buried out of Christian burial.
What?
Yeah, if she wasn't noble, she would not have been given this opportunity to have this Christian burial.
By there thou sayest, and the more pity that great folk should have countenance in this world to drown or hang themselves more than they're even Christian.
It's a pity that nobles can drown or hang themselves with privilege not given to poor people. Now you've said it. And then, yeah. Well,
Come, my spade.
keep digging.
There be no ancient gentlemen, but gardeners, ditchers, and grave makers. They hold up Adam's profession.
All right, he's referring here to Adam and Eve, the very first man, suggested to be the first man created. So the idea here is that he is the first man to ever have arms, because he was the first man. Now there's a pun on the word arms here. If you bear arms, you bear weapons, yeah. So there's going to be a little pun here. He's going to think he's pretty darn clever.
Was he a gentleman?
He was the first that ever bore arms.
Oh, he had none.
What, art a heathen? How dost thou understand the scripture? The scripture says Adam digged. Could he dig without arms?
Oh.
Now, I'll put another question to thee. If thou answerest me not to the point, confess thyself.
No, too.
All right, so one guy is saying he had arms, he bore arms, and the other guy's saying, well, what are you talking about? He didn't have any weapons. And then the other guy is referring to his arms, thinking he's pretty clever. This next little bit here is like a little riddle. He says, okay, well, I've got another little riddle here for you. Let's see if you can guess my meaning. If you can guess my meaning, I'll excuse you from work for the day.
Now, what is he that builds stronger than either the mason, the shipwright, or the carpenter?
Oh.
Who builds something that's stronger? A stonemason, a shipbuilder, or a carpenter?
The gallows maker. For that frame outlives 1,000 tenants.
A gallows is the construction, the frame that is built to hang people. So this guy is being a little bit cheeky here. He's saying, well, this guy, the gallows maker, he builds something that outlives 1,000 lives. So that's a lot.
I like thy wit well in good faith.
You have a good
the
sense of
gallows
humor.
does well. But how does it well? It does well to those that do ill. Now thou dost ill to say that the gallows is built stronger than the church. Our gal, the gallows may do well to thee.
All right, so good answer, he says, but they do good to those who do bad things. Your answer suggests that the gallows is stronger than the church, and that is going against the church. That's heresy. So he says, you better watch what you say, buddy, because you could end up in the gallows yourself, and then the gallows would be doing something good to you.
Do it again, come.
Who builds stronger than a mason, a shipwright, or a carpenter?
Aye, tell me that and unyoke.
Yeah.
Mary,
If you can guess, I'll unyoke you. I'll let you take the rest of the day off.
now I can tell.
Toot?
Oh, Mass, I cannot tell.
So he says, I got it, and then he says, what is it? He goes, I forgot.
Ah, cudgel thy brains no more about it, for your dull ass will not mend his pace with beating. And when you are asked this question next, say, a grave maker. The houses that he makes last till doomsday.
All right, so he says, well, don't worry your pretty little brain about it too much. You can't get an ass, a donkey, to move by beating it. So essentially, the first grave digger is calling this guy an ass. And that's important because there's going to be a little reference to this a little later on. The fact that he's a bit of an ass. And then he's going to say, the first clown is going to say, oh, get thee to yon, a tavern keeper, and get me something to drink.
Oh. Go, get thee to yawn. Fetch me a stoup of liquor. I did love,
Has this fellow no feeling of his business that he sings at grave making?
Yeah, so this clown is going to start singing. What he says is interesting. He says, when I was younger, I thought it was really sweet to set a date to get married. And then later on he's going to sing, but now the clutches of time have made me grow old, and I find myself just digging graves. And Hamlet's going to say, does this man not understand the seriousness of grave digging? He's singing while digging a grave.
Custom has made it in him a property of easiness.
'Tis e'en so, the hand of little employment hath the daintiest sense.
So he's so used to seeing death that he kind of ignores it. And Hamlet says, oh, you're right, you're exactly correct. Only those who never do such work are sensitive to it.
With his stealing steps, clawed me.
That skull had a tongue in it, and could sing once. How the knave jowls it to the ground as if 'twere Cain's jawbone that did the first murder.
Let's take a look here at the annotation. Cain's jawbone. Cain is said to have killed his brother Abel with the jawbone of an ass. So he's saying, how can it be? And he's starting to contemplate mortality, life and death, right? That everybody dies, mortality. And he says, that skull, look at that, he's got a skull in his hand. It used to have a tongue in it. Oh, it's so weird, and it could sing once. And he's just throwing this skull around like the skull was, used to be a murderer, like he used to be Cain. And then he's going to go on, Hamlet is going to contemplate, wondering who the skulls used to be. And he's going to talk about maybe that skull used to be a fancy lawyer and could, talk his way out of any court case. But now he's dead. He's just a skull. And he can't even put forth a case against the grave digger for assault and battery, throwing his skull around, right? And then he's going to suggest, maybe that skull was a wealthy landowner, had lots and lots of land, and he had lots of deeds to the lands, right? Like the papers. And the papers they weren't really paper, they were made out of calf skin. And so he's going to say he had so many papers for all of the land that he owned that all of those papers couldn't fit into the only property he has now, the coffin, right? And then he's going to go on to explain that maybe this skull was the skull of a politician that could talk really, really sweetly, like double talk.
It might be the fate of a politician which this ass now o'erreaches. One that would circumvent God, might it not?
It might, my lord.
Or of a courtier which could say, good morrow, sweet lord, how dost thou, good lord? This might be my lord such-a-one that praised my lord such-a-one's horse when he meant to beg it, might it not?
All right, so again, he's contemplating who this skull used to belong to. Might have been a politician who could outsmart God. Might have been a courtier, like a nobleman who was kissing the butt of another courtier by praising him and flattering him and saying, oh, how are you, good lord? And good night, good lord. And this might be the lord such-a-one, this one I'm talking about, that praised this such lord because he only wanted to borrow his horse. So it could be a courtier who was just using flattery.
Aye, my lord.
Why, e'en so. And now my lady worms, chapless and knocked about the mazard with a sexton's spade. Here's fine revolution, and we had the trick to see it.
All right, so he's saying, you know, now these people are the property of Lady Worm, right? That are, the maggots are decomposing the body. They are chapless, their jaws have been knocked out, and they've been knocked on the head with the flat part of a sexton is a churchyard caretaker. His spade, his shovel. Here's a fine revolution. Here is a turn of fortuna. Look at their fortune now. Everybody who lives ends up in a graveyard. Doesn't matter whether you're a fancy politician or a fancy courtier or a peasant. You all end up in the same place.
Did these bones cost no more the breeding but to play at loggats with them?
These bones are worth no more than, are they worth no more now than just to play bowling with them?
I'd ache to think on. There's another. Why might not that be the skull of a lawyer? Where be his quillets now? His quillets, his cases, his tenures, and his tricks?
Where are all his arguments and fine points of law now? Where's his tricks now? Why, this lawyer can't even use any tricks to get this guy, this gravedigger, accused of assault and battery.
Why does he suffer this rude knave now to knock him about the sconce with a dirty shovel and will not tell him of his action of battery? This fellow might be in his time a great buyer of land.
Great landowner.
With his statutes, his recognizances, his fines, his double vouchers, his recoveries. Is this the fine of his fines and the recovery of his recoveries, to have his fine plate full of fine dirt?
He's so rich, yet all he gets now is a skull full of dirt, just like everyone else.
But his vouchers vouch him no more of his purchases, and double ones too, than the length and breadth of a pair of indentures. The very conveyances of his lands will hardly lie in this box. And must the inheritor himself have no more, huh?
The deeds to his property wouldn't even fit in this coffin, and this coffin is the only property he owns now. Isn't it? It just seems so ironic to Hamlet. It just seems, yeah.
Not a jot more, my lord.
Is not parchment made of sheepskins?
Aye, my lord, and of calfskins too.
They are sheep and calves that seek out assurance in that.
Anyone who thinks money can get you a better place when you die is a sheep or a calf, is dumb. We all end up in the dirt no matter how rich or noble we are.
I will speak to this fellow. Whose grave is this, sir?
Right? Mine, sir.
I think it be thine, indeed, for thou liest in it.
Okay, so there's a big pun here on the word lie, right? To tell a lie, so he's saying you're lying. You're saying that this is your grave, but it's not really your grave. Who are you digging it for is what he wants to know. Well, he's saying, it's my grave because I'm in here digging it. It belongs to me. And Hamlet is going to say, no, you're lying. You're lying, telling a lie while you're in the grave. And they're going to pun very quickly back and forth. And at one time, the gravedigger is going to say to Hamlet, oh, you're pretty quick with your punning.
You lie out on, sir. Therefore it is not yours. For my part, I do not lie in it. Yet it is mine.
Let us lie in it to be in it, and say it is thine. 'Tis for the dead, not for the quick. Therefore thou liest.
All right, so he's saying you don't really truly lie down in it, and yet it is yours. Thou dost lie in it, and to be in it, and say it is thine. This is, you're lying. You're telling a lie. For it's for people who are dead, not for alive, not for the quick, not for people who are alive. Therefore, you are a liar.
'Tis a quick lie, sir.
Quick lie.
And away again, from me to you.
What man dost thou dig for?
I know man, sir.
What woman, then?
I know neither.
Who is to be buried in it?
One that was a woman, sir, but rest her soul, she's dead.
How absolute the knave is. We must speak by the card, or equivocation will undo us.
Yeah, so Hamlet here is being very observant. He's saying to Horatio, we better speak very, very precisely, because this gravedigger is interpreting what we say very literally. And he's saying, we better be on our guard, because he is going to kill us with his punning. He's going to outdo us with his punning. Yeah, so he's very, very cheeky.
By the Lord, Horatio, this 3 years I've taken note of it, the age has grown so picked that the toe of the peasant comes so near the heel of our courtier, he galls his kibe.
All right, let's take a look at the annotation. Hamlet is commenting on peasants who imitate the manners of fine courtiers. The image is of one man following another so closely that he chafes or galls the chilblains, the gibe of the man ahead. And the point here that he's making is these peasants are unnaturally reaching ahead of their station in life. And he's thinking, oh, I've noticed in the last 3 years that people are trying to climb up the ladder with how they speak. And this is an important point to note, because a little bit later on he's gonna make a similar comment about Osric, who is a lord. So just
How long hast thou been a grave maker?
Oh, of all the days in the year, I came to it that day that our last King Hamlet all came Fortinbras.
Of all the days in the year, I started this job on the day that old Hamlet defeated old Fortinbras. And it was also the day that young Hamlet was born.
How long is that since?
Cannot you tell that? Oh, every fool could tell that. 'Twas the very day young Hamlet was born. Eh? He that is mad and sent into England.
I marry. Why was he sent into England?
Why? Because he was mad. He shall recover his wits there, or if he do not, 'tis no great matter there.
All right, so he obviously doesn't know that who he's talking to is Hamlet. And Hamlet's kind of playing on him and saying, why was he sent there? And he's saying, well, because he was crazy. He went to England to recover his mind there. And if he doesn't recover his wits there, it doesn't make a difference, because they're all crazy there anyway. No one would notice.
Why?
'Twill not be seen in him there. There the men are as mad as he.
How came he mad?
Very strangely, they say.
How strangely?
Faith in with losing his wits.
Upon what ground?
Why, here in Denmark.
Again, this guy is establishing that he is truly a literal jokester, right? What ground did he lose his mind on? Well, this ground here in Denmark.
I've been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years.
So this is important because a little bit earlier on somebody was asking how old Hamlet is. And this sexton says, I have been working here since the day that Hamlet was born. And that has been 30 years, right? So Hamlet must be at least 30 years, even though he doesn't really seem like it, eh? It might, some critics suggest that this is a malapropism, right? A mistake in the timing.
How long will a man lie i' the earth ere he rot?
Be faith, if he be not rotten before he dies, as we have many pocky courses nowadays as will scarce hold the lane in.
That's a funny point. He's saying, how long will it take before our body rots away? And the guy says, well, if he's not already rotten before he dies, which is interesting because there is this theme, right, of disease in Denmark. If he's not already rotten by the time he gets there, it'll take about 8 or 9 years. And then he says, unless you're a tanner. If you're a tanner, you last a little bit longer because when you're tanning the hide, you're coloring the leather, and the liquid substance that you use to color and tan the hide makes you repellent to water. And he says, that's why a tanner will last longer in the grave, because he repels the water. And it's the water that makes the body rot.
Last you some 8 year or 9 year. A tanner will last you 9 year.
Why he, more than another?
Why, sir? He's hardly so tan with his trade. Oh, I'll keep hot water a great while, and your water is a sore decayer of your horse and dead body. Here's a skull now. This skull has lain in the earth 23 years.
23 years. And this is an important point because this skull is going to belong to somebody that Hamlet knew personally, and it's going to get him to contemplate mortality in a more serious way. He's going to really look at this skull and be kind of freaked out by it. Not the fact that it used to be dead, by the fact that I used to know this guy. And if you think about that, how strange would that be? It would kind of jolt you if you have feelings.
Whose was it?
Horse and mad fellas it was.
A crazy son of a bitch.
Who do you think it was?
Nay, I know not.
A pestilence on him for a mad rogue. I poured a flagon of Rhenish on my head once. Woo!
He poured a bottle of wine on my head once, this crazy son of a bitch, this court jester.
Same skull, sir. This skull was Yorick's skull, the king's jester.
This?
Even that?
Let me see.
It's going to freak him out.
Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio. A fellow of infinite jest, of most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. And now how abhorred in my imagination it is, my gorge rises at it.
Yeah, it turns my stomach. Hamlet is not sickened by the skull itself, but by the fact that it once belonged to somebody he knew. But what I want to point out here is his calm acceptance of all of this, right? We definitely see a different Hamlet here.
Here hung those lips that I have kissed I know not how oft. Where be your jibes now? Your gambol?
Where are all your jokes now, hey? And what about all your jumping around? Where are your flashes of merriment that used to make people roar with laughter? And then he's going to look at it a little bit closer and he's going to say, well, you can't even mock your own, the fact that you can't even smile. Because he was so funny, he would make fun of anything. He's saying, you can't even make jokes, not even about yourself, and the fact that you don't have a jawbone anymore.
Your songs, your flashes of merriment that were wont to set the table on a roar. Not one now to mock your own grinning. Quite chop-fallen.
Broken jaw.
Now get you to my lady's chamber, and tell her let her paint an inch thick to this favour she must come. Make her laugh at that.
Now this is an interesting point. What he's saying here is, go to my lady's bedroom and explain that no matter how beautiful you look in makeup, no matter how many inches of makeup you pile on, you'll still end up looking exactly like this skull. Everybody ends up in a graveyard. And this here, get thee to my lady's chamber. Who would his lady be? Ophelia. And very, very shortly, we're going to see Ophelia comes to this graveyard, like within a couple of lines here. And it's just a little bit ironic because you wouldn't think that his lady would indeed end up where Yorick is, right? So he's saying, tell her, you know, that doesn't matter how much makeup she puts on, she's still going to end up in the cemetery. And then 2 seconds later, she ends up in the cemetery. She is.
Prithee, Horatio, tell
We're going to find out. They're carrying her body.
me one thing.
What's that, my lord?
Dost thou think Alexander looked to this fashion of the earth?
Even so?
And smelled so? Ah.
So he says here, do you think Alexander the great conqueror, looks just like this skull? And Horatio says, yeah, probably just like that skull. And Hamlet's going to say, and smelled like it too? And he goes, yeah, probably smelled like it too. And then he's going to contemplate Caesar, Julius Caesar, the great, like he was a huge conqueror, rumored to have owned like half of the known world, right? He's going to say, do you think even Caesar looks like this in the grave? And Hamlet's going to say, yeah, everybody, you just end up as a skull. Everybody ends up in the grave. and ends up as a skull. And then Hamlet's going to put forth an interesting argument that I want to explain to you before we get there, because it'll help you understand what he's getting at. So he's going to suggest that both, like everybody who ends up in the dirt ends up back to dust, right? Dust to dust. So you started off as dust apparently, and you end up as dust or dirt decomposed in the ground. And at this time, they used to use clay to fill in the holes of barrels. They used to store things in barrels. And if the barrel got a little hole in it, they would use clay to plug up the hole. So it doesn't matter what the hole was. It could have been a hole in a barrel, maybe even a hole in a house. And they used to use clay to plug it up. And he's going to argue that how strange this is, that the greatest conqueror of all time, Julius Caesar, might end up as a plug for somebody's house. He's going to think that that's so strange, that it doesn't matter how rich and powerful you are in the world, we all end up as dirt in the ground.
E'en so, my lord.
To what base uses we may return, Horatio? Why may not imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander till he find it stopping a bunghole?
'Twas to consider too curiously to consider, sir.
No faith, not a jot, but to follow him thither with modesty enough and likelihood to lead it. As thus Alexander died, Alexander was buried, Alexander returneth into dust. The dust is earth, of earth we make loam, and why of that loam whereto he was converted might they not stop a beer barrel? Imperial Caesar, dead and turned to clay, might stop a hole to keep the wind away. Oh, that earth which kept the world in awe should patch a wall to expel the winter's flaw.
Yeah, so even the mighty Caesar turned to clay, and he ruled the whole world. And even he might just be used to plug a hole in somebody's wall.
But soft. But soft aside. Here comes the king, the queen, the courtiers. Who is it that they follow? And with such maimed rites?
With such ordinary funeral rites. Right away he picks up on that the funeral procession is very, very plain. It's not really elaborate and like decorated. As somebody who was really, really important, like a king, if a king died, would be a huge, like ornate, not celebration, but procession, right? So he's saying, who is this person? Must be somebody of noble birth, but why is their ceremony so plain? And then he's going to guess, he's going to say, whoever it is must have committed suicide, because they would not receive all of the same fanfare, all of the decorations. And he's going to try to guess whose funeral procession it is.
This doth betoken the course they followed it with desperate hand for do its own life.
Suggests whoever it is must have taken their own life, but was of great nobility, because the king and queen are here.
'Twas of some estate. Couch we a while, and mark.
Let's just rest here for a while and watch what's going down. So here we have Laertes, who's pissed right off.
What ceremony else?
That is Laertes, a very noble youth. Mark.
What ceremony else?
Her obsequies have been as far enlarged as we have warranties.
All right, so Laertes is saying, this is it? This is all you're going to do for my beautiful sister? What other rites can you perform? What other rites? And the priest is going to say, look, I performed all the rites I am allowed to. Instead of prayers, she should be receiving rocks and broken pottery thrown on her grave because she committed suicide. But if the king had not given a command that overruled our normal customs, she'd have been buried in the unholy ground outside the church until the very last day of judgment, forever, till doomsday. This is going to really, really offend Laertes.
Her death was doubtful, and but that great command o'ersways the order, she should in ground unsanctified have lodged till the last trumpet. For charitable prayer, shards, flints, and pebbles should be thrown on her. Yet here she is allowed her virgin rites, her maiden struments, and the bringing home of bell and burial.
Yeah, so he's saying, You should be happy that at least we've given her this much. She's allowed to be buried as a pure virgin, and in addition to that, the bell is tolling for her, announcing that a death has taken place, and maiden struments, flowers have been thrown upon her grave.
Must there no more be done?
No more be done. We should profane the service of the dead to sing sage requiem and such rest to her as to peace-parted souls.
It would be disrespectful to the others who died peacefully, not by their own hands, if we sang the same requiem, the same songs, and did the same ceremony. It wouldn't be respectful to the other people.
Lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring. I tell thee, churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling.
What?
Ooh. So he says here, you know what? Put her in the ground then, if this is all you can do. I promise you, though, that from her pure flesh, flowers will grow, and you churlish priest, you disrespectful priest, an angel my sister will turn into. And she'll be an angel when you are lying in hell, howling. Ooh. The priest is going to say, oh, how dare you say such a thing?
The fair Ophelia.
Sweets to the sweet, farewell. I hope thou shouldst have been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed do have decked, sweet maid, and not have strewed thy grave.
Okay, so Hamlet is really, really surprised here. Although he probably should have figured this out, right? Earlier. But Laertes says, my sister shall be an angel. And this gives Hamlet the information he's looking for. Oh my God, it's Ophelia's grave. And then he watches as his mother says, sweet flowers for a sweet girl. She's putting flowers on her coffin. Even though actually it's an open coffin, so she must be putting flowers on inside the coffin. I hoped that you would have been my Hamlet's wife, and I would have been putting flowers on your marriage bed instead of this.
Oh, treble woe, fall 10 times treble on that cursed head, whose wicked deeds thy most ingenious sense deprived thee of!
I curse 30 times the person responsible for you losing your senses, losing your mind. Who is he cursing here? Well, let's take a look here. Who do you think he's cursing here? Hamlet. But aren't there other people who are responsible for her losing her mind? If you could say, who else would be responsible in some way? Polonius, yeah. Claudius, anybody else? Laertes himself is responsible in some way. Anybody else that you can think of? The king, yeah, for sure. Maybe even the queen a little bit, right? So interesting that here, Laertes places a curse on whoever is responsible for her death, for helping her go crazy. So this may or may not be some foreshadowing about who is going to die.
Hold off the earth a while, till I have caught her once more in mine arms!
Do not bury her until I hold her in my arms one more time. It's an open casket, it's an open grave, and he dives in to the grave to hold her in his arms one last time. This is believable because it was established that they had a very, very close, genuine, loving sister-brother relationship, right? This is going to offend Hamlet, who is now going to have all of these old feelings well up inside of him, right? He's tried to bury them, but seeing this and like so surprised, like all of these feelings are going to come out in him. He's going to act pretty rashly here, and then he's going to quickly calm himself down. Again, this is a new Hamlet. He's calm, he's focused. He has a little blip here where he loses it, but then he calms himself again.
Now pile your dust upon the quick and dead, till of this flat a mountain you have made, to o'ertop on pillion, or the sky shed a blue and burst. What?
Okay, so do not bury her. Oh, wait. So this bit here, he's saying, okay, now you can put a bunch of dirt on here and pile it so high that it'll be taller than Mount Olympus. High mountains in Greece. Olympus was the home of the gods. So he's saying, bury me with her, in other words. Hamlet is going to want to outdo this.
Is he whose grief bears such an emphasis? Whose phrase of sorrow conjures the wandering stars and makes them stand like wonder-wounded heroes? This is I, Hamlet the Dane.
So again, he acts really, really impulsively here. So he says, who the hell is this who is claiming so much love for Ophelia? So much love, in fact, that he's able to charm the planets. The planets change their position in relation to the stars and were thought of, therefore, as wandering. So he's saying, who do you think you are that is claiming to have loved her so much that even the stars are astonished by the level of love you have for her? And he announces himself, and then he leaps into the grave with Laertes, and they start duking it out in the grave. He loses it for sure. Then he says, Laertes here next says, the devil take thy soul. So again, he curses Hamlet here. This is important to note. Maybe foreshadowing of what's going to happen to Hamlet.
The devil take thy soul! Please, Samuel! How could you take thy fingers from my throat? So though I am not splenity but rash, yet have I something in me dangerous, which let thy wiseness fear. Away thy hand!
All right, so he's telling the truth here. Hamlet says, you're not praying very well here. If I were you, I would take my hands off my throat here. He said, I may not be hot-tempered, but I promise you there's something in me that is dangerous and you should fear. If you were wise, take your hand off me right now.
Good, my lord, be quiet! I will fight with him upon this theme until mine eyelids will no longer wear.
All right, so everybody says, calm down, calm down. And Horatio even says, Hamlet, calm down, what's going on? And Hamlet says, I'm going to fight with this person, with Laertes, over Ophelia and how much I love her until my eyes don't blink anymore, until I die.
What theme?
I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. What wilt thou do for her?
All right, so he's challenging Laertes here. He says, I loved her 40,000 times more than you ever did, buddy. And he's saying, what would you do for her? Would you fight for her? Would you cry for her? Would you stop eating for her? Would you tear yourself apart? Would you drink vinegar? Would you wrestle with a crocodile? He says, I would do all of those things. And you come here to whine about how much you loved her? Trying to outface me, trying to outdo my love for her? He says, oh, no way, you can't do it.
Oh, he's mad, Laertes.
For love of God, forbear him.
Come show me what thou do, would weep, would fight, would fast, would tear thyself, would drink up easel, eat a crocodile, I'll do it. Dost thou come here to whine, to outface me with leaping in her grave? Be buried quick with her, and so will I. And if thou pray to mountains, let them throw millions of acres on us, till our ground, singeing his pate against the burning zone, make Ossa like a wart. Nay, in thou mouth, I'll rant as well as thou.
All right, so he's challenging Laertes here. He's saying, will you do all these things? Because I will. And he says, and you want to talk about mountains, Mount Olympus? Bury you in the mountain, in the grave to build Mount Olympus? He says, I'll outdo that. He says, pour dirt on me in the grave with her until your mountain looks like a little wart. And make Ossa like a wart. He says, oh, if you want to go for it, I will take you on. I'll rant as well as you can.
Is mere madness, thus a while the fit will work on him, and none as patient as the female dove when that her golden couplets are disclosed, his silence will sit drooping.
Just in a minute, he'll calm down, the queen says.
Hear you, sir. What is the reason that you use me thus?
Okay, so he's starting to calm down here, right? Listen to me, sir. Why do you treat me this way, Laertes?
I loved you ever. But it is no matter. Let Hercules himself do what he may. The cat will mew, and dog will have his day.
All right, now this is important to note, because this reflects on his new philosophy. No matter what I do, I can't change you. He says, no matter what a hero like Hercules does, fools will still seek to draw attention to themselves. Life goes on. I can't change you. The cat will mew, the dog will have his day, and then he leaves. This is his new philosophy in life. He's not going to, try to change people who he knows he can't change. It reminds me of the Serenity Prayer. Does anyone know what that is? The Serenity Prayer is a prayer that goes like this. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So essentially, it's almost like this is what Hamlet is saying here. I can't change you. I don't know why you hate me, but I can't change you. And so life goes on. And he leaves.
I pray you, good Horatio, wait upon him.
Go with him,
Strengthen your
Horatio.
patience in our last night's speech. We'll put the matter to the present push. Good Gertrude, set some watch over your son. This grave shall have a living monument. An hour of quiet shortly shall we see. Till then, in patience, our proceeding be.
All right, so he says to Laertes, remember what we planned last night and be patient. Just hang tight, bud. You'll get your revenge on this. And then he says, hey, Gertrude, get somebody to watch over your crazy son, will ya? And then he says, this grave shall have a living monument. We will build a gravestone here that will last forever. An hour of quiet shortly shall we see. Control yourself by thinking of our talk last night. We'll handle this issue very soon. Till then, impatient, our proceeding be. Soon we'll have the calm we need. Until then, we must wait patiently. Now, this is interesting. It might be some foreshadowing. Pretty soon, we're going to have the calm that we need. We know that this has got to come to an end somehow. It's a tragedy, and we know there's renewed hope at the end. So it might be some foreshadowing here, even of his own death, right? Because as the unnatural king, he has stolen the throne and has set disruption in order, right? And so the only way to get things calm in Denmark is to remove the unnatural king and put a natural king in its place. So that, when that happens, then the country will experience what he says here, this calmness. All right, so I think we will finish there for today, and I guess we'll move on to Act 5, Scene 2 tomorrow.